Welcome, everyone. Good to see you all here today. I think we have even fewer than last time, so please tell your friends to show up before the recall begins. I'd like to welcome members and guests. If you have a guest, could you please bring your guest up to the microphone and introduce him or her?
Hi, is this on? On? Check. Hi, President Steve. Joe Colici, Civil and Structural Engineer. Oh, I have a guest with me today, Ashley Pass. She's a PhD from Stanford in Material Science and Engineering. She's been with IBM, Hitachi, and Western Digital. She's now retired, and she has gone to the gala. She's gone to the barbecue. She's gone down the Guadalupe River with Carl Salas. Ashley Pass.
Welcome, Ashley. And if you'll notice, Joe was speaking right into the microphone so we could all hear him, which was great. So Jen, your turn.
Hello, Jennifer Simmons, Interior Design. And I have a guest here who has sought us out, interested in membership. She was originally Matt Bell's guest, but he could not make it today. So I'm so happy to be able to step in. This is Patricia Renovato. She's in sales and she's also a life coach. So please welcome Patricia.
Welcome, Patricia. Wow, and Leslie has an announcement.
Hey, President Steve, we have 40
Leslie, even eat the mic more, would you?
We have 40 people joining us on Zoom today.
Great, wonderful. So we got 40 on Zoom plus about 40 of you, so better than a kick in the face. Thanks, Leslie. We now have a new member introduction. Celine Wang is going to introduce herself, I believe, on Zoom.
Hello, fellow Rotarian. Thanks for having me here today. Can you guys see me? I was born and raised in Taiwan. When I was 5, I saw Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston on TV singing When You Believe. And that was the moment I knew I was going to be an American. And that was also the moment I believed that one day I would be an American. My father actually named me Susan until the day I decided to pack up my bags and get out of Taiwan and by myself to find opportunities and freedom and see what's out there when I was 13. I guess you can say that by naming myself was the first step to independence. I then spent in the next 3 years finishing high school in beautiful Vancouver, BC. I experienced the East Coast winter during college, and I love to travel. So after college, I dedicated a year to just do that. I spent 3 months in India, 3 months in Europe, another 3 months in Southeast Asia. Then I drove cross country from Maine to San Diego and finally settled in the Bay Area. I've been here for over 4 years, and I'm proud to be a Japantown resident. My background is in civil engineering and design build. My most recent works have been multifamily and institutions. So prior to joining Rotary in July, I was part of Friends for Youth, mentoring high school kids to help emphasize on youth development, academic achievement, health and wellness, and critical skills for future skill sufficiency. And a couple fun facts about me. I taught yoga for 6 years, and I have a 3-year-old mini golden doodle named Bella. It's been great being a Rotarian, and I look forward to getting to know you all. Thank you.
I'm not sure, Celine, if you can see us, but we are giving you a standing ovation. Thank you, everyone. What a beautiful story, the American dream. Diane Garazzi was a member of our club for quite a while. I've actually not met Diane. She's in, I think, Venice right now. And I've switched it up a bit today. Instead of doing a bunch of short committee-related announcements and such, our normal fare, Diane is, along with a friend of hers who's a citizen of Afghanistan. They're going to do a long presentation now before our actual program today about Afghanistan. I'm going to let Diane do the intro. Obviously, she's going to be on Zoom, as is her partner Farazpour. So with that, let's dive into the Zoom universe again and see what happens. So Diane, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hi, President Steve. Thanks for asking us to join you today. I'm actually in Florence, Italy, where I'm the director of the Cal State International Programs in Italy. And Firozpur, my friend and fellow professor, is joining us from Berlin. And I'll start out by just telling you a little bit about the background between Rotary and our Afghan friends. Starting in 2012, members of the Rotary Club of San Jose, in cooperation with the International Service Committee, served as what we called Afghan ambassadors. We have some pictures of their events if we want to go ahead and roll them if possible. Rotarians from our club befriended these journalism professors from Herat and Balkh universities. The professors, including Firozpur, spent about 3 months at San Jose State learning new ways of teaching, visiting local businesses, attending various events with you. Here you can see the picture of them arriving at the airport as Rotarians join them. Here is Maria, who is most recently Dean of Herat University. Here is our welcome dinner at the Rotary House. And it was, up until then, the largest event ever at the Rotary House. Here you see they took us to Muir Woods. Julie Scapazzi rented a van to take all our Afghans to Muir Woods. We just did a lot of fun things. And you, the Rotary Club, you opened your homes and your hearts. We went to various media organizations since they were journalism professors, went to Google, Facebook, many different places. So they were in San Jose, courtesy of grants from the US State Department. The idea was to help bring democracy to Afghanistan through education, but the inroads that we made are now crumbling under the Taliban. Firozpur, you can tell us more about that.
Thank you very much, Professor Diane Garosi. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon in the United States of America and good evening in the Europe. My name is, as Professor Diane Garosi told you, Ahmad Zia Firozpur. Originally, I came from Afghanistan, Mazar Sharif. It is a northern city bordering with the Central Asian states. By profession, I'm a journalist. And currently, I live along with my family in Berlin, Germany. And I had, along with my colleagues back in 2012, had the pleasure to visit United States of America and studied at the University of San Jose. And we had the opportunity to explore the city, the state. And fortunately, we had the pleasure and the time to meet with the Rotarians. It's a great pleasure to join the fellows from the Rotarians again through the online. And let me a little bit go into the details of what we have learned and what we have done in the United States and how this grant of 3 months helped us to bring democracy, freedom of speech, and now new media skills in Afghanistan, exploring journalism, which is now on the hands of the Taliban. So this 3 months of our exposure in the United States of America has helped us to widen our understand how the journalism globally affect democracy, peace development, and businesses, and how we could use the new technology in implementation and application of journalism principles. So, of course, it was not the only grant that the United States of America has offered for the Afghan fellows. There were several, but it was one of the good ones that we have received. And now I am talking not only from my side, but I'm representing a group of other university colleagues, both from Herat and Balkh University, where I am in touch with them, and they are now living under the control of Taliban. Since we started the program at the United States at San Jose State University, we were very much hopeful and optimistic for a bright future for Afghanistan, for our students, for our next generation. But now it's unfortunate that all those treasures, the blood, by saying this, I want to just emphasize that it was a failure of the Afghan allies and the international allies that the country went back on the hands of the Taliban, which they used to be called as the terrorists or the enemies of the United States. So especially this situation is not affordable, not acceptable for the young generation, for the journalists, for the civil society, for university professors, for journalists. When I'm speaking with you right now from Berlin, today, a group of journalists were arrested by Taliban in Kabul city, where they were, for example, covering a protest of the Afghan women. And yesterday, of course, Taliban jailed a group of Afghan women in the charge of protest. On the other hand, when I see and when I talk to you Rotarians, please let me elaborate about what is really going on against Afghanistan citizens. So Afghanistan citizens are under the violence and control of the Taliban, and especially those who are living in Panjshir Valley or Panjshir province, which is not under the control of the Taliban, but unfortunately, according to the sources from the area, there is a genocide is going on against the people who lives in Panjshir Valley, because they are resisting against the Taliban regime. And reportedly, the Pakistani helicopters and jets, they have used bombs against the civilians, the women and the children, and thousands have been killed, unfortunately, in charge of doing nothing, just to be a regular civilian in Afghanistan. So I would really, first of all, want to thank, as a citizen of Afghanistan, for what the United States of America has done for the country in terms of treasure and human capital and the time. But on the other hand, I would like to recall the world, the international community, including the United States of America, through the Rotarians, that they shall reconsider their policy and strategy and not let Afghanistan to only be controlled by a specific group. It's going to be very dangerous. It's going to be very, very critical, first of all, for the Afghan nation, for the regional countries, and later on for the whole world, because we have the experience when the attack of 9/11 happened in Afghanistan. Just tomorrow, we have the 9/11 anniversary. And so we just need to recount and recall and reconsider Afghanistan. We cannot remove Afghanistan from the map of the world, but Afghanistan's nation is not guilty. They need support until they build a bright future. Afghanistan has resources. Afghanistan is a rich country in terms of mines and culture and history, and in terms of the youth. Afghanistan is one of the youngest country in the world. Afghanistan has a human capital, but one has to really help the country.
Firozpur, we're all glad that you and your immediate family are safe in Berlin, Germany. I'm getting a lot of questions, private chat here on the Zoom, wanting to know about the Afghan professors, the ones who came over. Are all of them are not safe, are they, at this point?
Well, thank you very much, Professor Garosi. It's unfortunate that the media workers, including journalists, reporters, the media professors, they're not safe anymore in Afghanistan. As I told you in the beginning of my remarks, today, the Taliban has tortured 5 of a newspaper's journalists and hardly beaten them in one hand. On the other hand, the Taliban already started to censor the private media in Afghanistan. You don't see enough women in our media shows. You don't see dances. You don't hear music. So already a censor has stopped, and so many warning signals sent to the media workers, including the professors. So I don't want to really go into details of where and how they are now in Afghanistan due to the security concerns, but I can tell you that they are not safe. They are not in a mode to continue teaching. They already escaped, some from one province to another one, trying to ask for asylum. They need a protection. Not only they have taught in Afghanistan, but also they have traveled abroad. They have been to the United States. They have been recognized, their faces and their names. And those are not only the university professors. Those groups of people, they were the civil society activists. They were the commentators in media. Their names are well known in Afghanistan, and they are not safe.
And we should probably mention that the US State Department initiated a new kind of visa called the P2 that grantees like San Jose State, the programs I directed, can potentially bring people who worked with the grant over to the United States. But the process is very, very long, and these people had to go to third safe countries for even consideration. And they couldn't be a country like Iran. So we've had many, many requests from these Afghan professors and their families and their friends to please help them. But we've processed some visa applications, but it's by far a done deal. There's a lot of uncertainty right now.
It is for sure uncertainty, and it is also a big request. And I think P2 is still a good option, but one has to really lobby for this and give more hints to the decision makers and help them to get out of the country, at least to stay for a while in a third country is also a good option. But I'm really sorry that our human capital is escaping from our country. That's so-called a brain drain in Afghanistan. And but now the situation don't allow them to continue work in Afghanistan. So it's a better choice if they will receive a protection and a guarantee of visa.
Yes. I'm seeing in the chat, Patricia Fox asks, are any of the Taliban actions not predictable?
Diane and Farazpour, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
After the answer to this question, I'd like to offer people in the room the chance to ask you some questions. So anyone in the room who'd like to ask a question, please come up to the mic. Go ahead, Diane.
Well, if maybe Firozpur can tackle that question, if you have an answer, are the Taliban actions predictable?
Taliban have never changed since the 3 decades, and nothing is unpredictable. Look at their cabinet structure. They announced a sort of cabinet yesterday. It's full of the Islamic scholars and the Taliban former commanders with no women participation, no representative from civil society, nor from academia, nor from the intellectuals. So nothing has unfortunately changed.
Diane, no one, oh, someone is walking up to the mic. Mike Conniff, go ahead.
Hello, Diane. Thank you very much for coming in. This has been a hard time for all of us in the United States to see our need to withdraw from a country that we devoted 20 years of war and development to. But I wanted to ask if any of the members, any of the faculty who attended your program joined Rotary or had any activities associated with Rotary in Kabul or other provincial capitals. Thanks.
I don't believe so. I had met with a gentleman from the Rotary Club in Kabul, and there were two, very small, and Kabul is quite a distance from Herat and Balkh. I don't believe there was Rotary Firozpur in either Herat or Balkh, correct?
Well, there is, of course, an interest to continue a sort of contribution with Rotary Club. But since, number one, we had a difference of time zone, and number two, the professors were very busy, not only teaching, as I told you, they were working with media, with civil society organizations, and teaching at the private university. And but they know Rotary for sure. We talk about Rotary. When I was online today, so before that, I briefed them and I told them, and they sent their greetings to all of you. But there is an interest. If there's possible, I would like to, for example, myself, I would like to be a volunteer and member, or I don't know how the procedure works with the Rotary.
Well, during when the time that you were here and afterward, Firozpur, we actually raised money within the International Service Committee of this club, and we built libraries in different women's shelters in Afghanistan, and donated quite a few books. So,
well, that I really remember it, Professor Garosi, and you shipped the books, and some books also came to Mazar and Herat and Kabul. And I also saw some updates on the Rotary's website. And but to be honest, people are not that much familiar with the Rotary as it should be in Afghanistan.
Diane and Firozpur, we need to move on with our program. Do either of you have any final comments?
just thank you for having us.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me here from Berlin, not only necessarily from Berlin, but representing Afghanistan. Thank you to all Rotarians. Thank you for giving us the opportunity. We really hope that a new phase of partnership will start between the nations of Afghanistan and the United States.
Thank you both. So, from the sublime to the ridiculous, barbecue update. Here's our guys, looks like Nielsen and Brock, and we got the bartenders there looking good. Some of your other friends. My buddy Ed Correa. Are my slides not showing? Oh well. Hi, Firozpur. Well, it's not working. That's okay. So we had some barbecue slides. Also, I want to remind you all, we're going to have a new protocol in place 2 weeks from today. This is mandated by the city of San Jose. Vaccines will be required, proof of vaccination will be required for any events in city facilities with more than 50 guests. Summit Center is owned by the city. We usually have more than 50 guests. I didn't count all of you today, but a negative test result is not adequate. You must be vaccinated. The staff of Rotary and the board is figuring out the protocol. It'll be something very simple. You'll show up with your card or with the QR code on your phone, and that'll begin in 2 weeks. So please be forewarned. Well, let's look at slides of the barbecue. What do you say? Rotarians having fun. There's Bert and Clarence and Scott, and I can't see these very well, but I wanted to thank any of you who came. I know we're still in a strange phase where a lot of you are not going to meetings, thus very few people are here today. Thanks in particular to those of you who are here today. Thanks Mom, Dad, my cousin Frank, my little brother Bert over there. There's a cute picture of the red badgers. Also, remember to wear masks in the room. It is a rule. When I'm speaking, I'm taking mine off. You're welcome to take it off when you speak, but please wear a mask when you're in the room. And a reminder to all of you on Zoom, please stay muted the whole time so that we don't have to listen to you brushing your teeth or anything else. Thank you. And it's my pleasure to introduce my friend Suzanne St. John Crane, who in turn will introduce today's speaker. Suzanne.
Right. Hey, Rotarians. How's it going? Good to see everybody. Okay. So excited to have our speaker here today. With 3 countries sending missions to Mars in 2021, including Amazon. Is Amazon a country yet? It might as well be. Okay. Including the first Mars helicopter, there is new interest in the red planet. What do we know? What do we hope to learn about this alien world next door? So we're in for a treat today, friends, as our returning speaker, Andrew Fraknoi, will discuss the discoveries that revealed ancient Mars as a world much like the Earth, with lakes, rivers, and possibly the stirrings of life. Andrew Fraknoi retired in 2017 as the chair of the astronomy department at Foothill College, and now teaches astronomy courses for older adults like us at SF State, go Gators, the Fromm Institute at the University of San Francisco, and, oh, by the way, he was the California Professor of the Year in 2007. He's also lead author of a free online college astronomy textbook. I'd like to see his astrology book, though. Astronomy from Open Stacks, and a children's book from When the Sun Goes Dark. Rotarians on Zoom and in the room, please join me in welcoming the professor, Andrew Fraknoi.
Thank you so much for that enthusiastic introduction. Can everyone hear me? Great. It's really nice to be back with you after some years and after I retired from Foothill College. And today I want to talk to you about the exploration of Mars. So I'm going to share my slides. There we go. From the beginning. Can everyone see those? Great. Excellent. So it's a strange time in our country and the world. Science continues to reveal and do remarkable things, and yet it's also become a pawn in political struggles. It's very hard for scientists to understand some of what's going on. But here I want to talk to you about a triumph of science and technology, our new understanding of our neighbor planet, Mars. Many of you know that we live in a new age of discovery, a golden age of planetary exploration that is very similar to the age of the great sailing ships. We have explored every nook and cranny of our solar system now with our robot probes. The solar system, the sun's family, consists of 8 planets, at least 5 dwarf planets, with many more we think ready to be discovered, and at least 214 moons. New ones are still being found all the time. So it's a rich place for exploration. And I want to show you one particular target, which is the planet Mars. Now, Mars is the planet one further out from the sun than we are. And every 2.2 years, we line up with Mars in the way shown in this picture, where Mars is on the opposite side of the Earth from the sun, and it's closest to us. That's when it's best to send spacecraft to Mars. And we have sent an entire armada of robot spacecraft to orbit and land on the red planet. I want to show you a little chart that gives you a quick summary of the differences and similarities between our planet and Mars. First of all, by coincidence, we both have 24-hour days, and we both have a planet that's tilted from the vertical as it goes around the sun, which gives both planets seasons. But then the differences are stark too. Mars is further away, so it takes almost 2 years, 2 Earth years to go around the sun. And the most crucial difference, which we'll talk about, is that Mars is a little planet. its gravity is only 38% that of Earth. And that's a big difference, which has a major role in its evolution. Sunlight is much less there, but also dramatically, Mars has not been able to hold on to a lot of air. So its air pressure is much less than our air pressure on Earth. Being on Mars is like being 100,000 feet up in the Earth's atmosphere. And the air is made mostly of carbon dioxide. And not only is there not much of it, but the stuff that it's mostly made of is what we like to breathe out, not in. So your first deep breath would be your last deep breath on the planet Mars. And all future missions where people are involved, they're going to have to live in pressurized domes and wear spacesuits because it's not a place where we can breathe safely. Nevertheless, it's a fascinating world, and we've explored a lot of it, starting in 1976, when we were able to send the first orbiter and lander. We got pictures like this. This is actually a compilation of images of Mars from many different individual shots. And you can see the fascinating geology. Let me focus first on these three round objects to the left. They turn out to be giant volcanoes. Here they are with the United States superimposed to scale. So you can see these three volcanoes. Here, the top one, for example, is bigger than the entire state of Washington. These are volcanoes to be reckoned with. But I want to focus on another volcano just a little to the left of this, which I consider to be the top tourist site in the entire solar system. And that's Mount Olympus on Mars. It is a single volcanic mountain 3 times the height of Mount Everest. And how large is it? Let's again look at it to scale. Here is the state of Arizona to scale. So Mount Olympus, or Olympus Mons as it's called, is larger at its base than the entire state of Arizona. Plus, it doesn't have any election result problems. So in fact, you can see that it would be quite a trek from the base of the volcano to the opening at the top. We think that this will represent macho tourism of the future. You will not be a macho tourist until you've climbed Mount Olympus from the base all the way to the caldera, the opening at the top. But I also want to show you a kind of a 3D view of this to show that even just getting up to the main part of the volcano will require you to climb a cliff that in places is 4 miles high. So this will be adventure trekking in the best sense. I also want to mention that one of the other volcanoes, called Arzia Mons, or Mount Arzia, is especially known to geologists because it has holes on the side of it. Here are some close-up pictures of the holes. Each one of these is a lava tube where the lava is long gone, and it represents a deep opening into this volcano. One day when humans are on Mars, these caves might well be the first places we set up base camp, because you could put a covering over the opening of the cave and then pressurize the cave inside in a way to make it a human dwelling. It's a fascinating place. As part of my retirement from Foothill College, I've been writing science fiction stories, and my first published science fiction story took place in one of these caves on the side of this volcano. Here's a close-up of one of those openings, which is about 500 feet across. So it's really quite an opportunity for future exploration. Well, I want to also just mention the Grand Canyon of Mars, called Mariner Valley, which is a canyon system so large that it stretches from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. If it were on Earth, it would stretch the length of our country. So anytime someone from Arizona is bragging about their Grand Canyon, you can mention Mariner Valley. It makes our Grand Canyon look like a ditch in comparison. But I want to show you one of the canyon floors here, seen from orbit, with show you some landslides that have taken place here. Very dramatic geological scenery in this Grand Canyon of Mars. We can see landslides. Here's an actual photograph capturing a landslide, an active landslide in these canyons on Mars. But I want to show you now the bottom of one of these canyons. And you can see a kind of layering in the bottom floor of the canyon, which geologists tell us represents standing water back and forth, setting up layers in the geology. This on Earth is done by standing water. And that's a great mystery when we see pictures like this, because today Mars is a low pressure, dry and cold environment. And we know that in this environment, with no air pressure, water simply can't be liquid on the surface of Mars. Water can be water vapor, it can evaporate. Water can freeze and become sheets of ice, but liquid water simply can't exist under Mars conditions. So how can we be seeing these layered water geology features in the bottom of the Grand Canyon? Furthermore, other pictures from orbit have revealed structures like this. This is a remarkable canyon system, 1.5 miles wide. This scene covers about 17 miles from top to bottom. And this looks for all the world like a dried up riverbed. On Earth, we would certainly say this was a dried up riverbed. And on Mars, too, it looks suspiciously like that. Furthermore, when we have explored close up with our robot rovers, we see in many other places the kind of layered rocks that we see on Earth only in places where standing water has lapped back and forth. But even more amazing, I want to now show you one of my favorite pictures from Mars, which are the blueberries at the Meridani landing site for one of our rovers. And these are actually metallic spheres about the size of blueberries, which we see on the floor of one of the regions of Mars that our rovers have explored. We now know that these kinds of rounded spheres have to have been made by centuries, millennia of flowing water. Only flowing liquids can make these rounded shapes in geology. So this is even more dramatic proof that once upon a time, there must have been water on Mars, water sufficient to make our Martian blueberries. Here are two pictures. One of them is Earth, one of them is Mars. Can you tell which is which? It's pretty hard to tell, but I will tell you that Earth is on the left and Mars is on the right. In both cases, we are seeing water drainage systems. On the left, this is a drainage system in Yemen on Earth. And on the right, we see something very similar on Mars from orbit. So again, this seems to astronomers and geologists to be direct proof that Mars once upon a time had flowing water. And the water is still there. Here's a beautiful orbit that a beautiful picture that a European spacecraft took from orbit, showing a huge reservoir of ice in this crater. We think this crater was once filled with water, and now what remains is this blob of ice in the middle of the crater. That's the technical term, blob. And here's a covered crater where the Martian red dust has covered the crater. But if you look at the bottom, we think that if you could wipe away the dust, what you would see there too are great deposits of ice. And there's ice at the poles of Mars. So that ice probably came from liquid water once upon a time. So what does this all mean? what we think this means is that once upon a time, Mars must have had a lot more liquid water. And if that's true, it must have had a much thicker layer of air so that the pressure could allow liquids to exist. Our theory is that Mars started with a much thicker atmosphere like Earth and like Venus, but because it was a little planet with low gravity, over the millions and billions of years, it lost its atmosphere, it's lost its air. But that took a long time. And at the beginning, Mars probably was much more like the Earth, with flowing rivers, with great lakes, with more temperate conditions, and therefore with the possibility that early Mars may have started life as much as Earth did, and perhaps at the same time that Earth did. And that's a very exciting idea. That's why so many space agencies, so many countries, and so many billionaires are interested in Mars. Is it possible that Mars, once upon a time, had the first beginnings of life completely independent of the Earth? Our spacecraft are landing in places where we think water once existed long ago, like the Gale crater seen here, where Curiosity, the rover Curiosity, landed. Here is Curiosity. It has, among many other instruments, a laser that can pulverize rock on Mars, and then instruments that can smell that pulverized rock and tell us what it's made of. And you can see the 6 independently suspended wheels that allow it to do dirt biking, rough terrain movement on the surface of Mars. Here is a selfie taken by the Curiosity rover. Its great arms stuck out into the distance. It took many pictures, which we then assembled into this remarkable selfie showing our robot representative on Mars. And as many of you know, the most exciting Mars mission is now underway on Mars. Before I show you that, I have to show you that we now have competition on Mars. This is the Chinese Zhurong rover with its landing platform on Mars, taken a couple of months ago. And it's kind of an amazing picture because who's taking the picture on Mars? The landing the landing platform is in the picture. The rover's in the picture. Who's taking this picture? So the Chinese were pretty smart. They set up a portable station with a camera. Then the rover moved back to its landing base, and that outside camera then took a picture, which was transmitted back to Earth. So this is not a selfie. This is a professional photograph taken on Mars. But we know now that many other countries, India has an orbiting spacecraft, the United Arab Emirates have a spacecraft. Lots of countries are interested in Mars for the same reason we are. But as I said, our most recent, most complicated, most sophisticated machinery on Mars is the Perseverance rover, seen here landing from a sky crane, one of the most complex maneuvers ever undertaken. And here it is on the surface of Mars. And it has a companion. In addition to the Perseverance rover and science laboratory on the right, you see on the left this cute little helicopter drone called Ingenuity, which became the first independently powered flying object on another world. It's really a remarkable, remarkable little device. But everything about this mission is quite something. I don't pay attention to all the details here. You can see all the different science projects here. Just this week, NASA announced that it's taken its first sample, put it inside a sealed tube. These samples will be left behind on Mars, and they will be picked up by a future spacecraft, which will bring them back to Earth one day, probably in another decade, not in the current decade. Also, there's an experiment on board to take the carbon dioxide in the air, break it down, and make oxygen out of it. to show that that can be done for future missions. And that has already been successful in making our own oxygen on Mars. There's also an instrument called Sherlock, which is looking in detail at the minerals of the surface to see where water was and where life might have begun. And because it's called Sherlock as an abbreviation, they put a little address plate on it that said 221B Baker Street, which is Sherlock Holmes's address in fiction. But as I say, along with the scientific instrument is this amazing little helicopter drone called Ingenuity. Here we see it flying 16 feet above the surface. Because the air is so thin, the rotor blades have to turn much faster. We didn't know if it was going to work in this thin atmosphere to be able to fly at all, but it not only worked, but it's working so well, it's now on its 11th or 12th flight. And instead of just demonstrating that it could do it, they're now using Ingenuity as a scout to show the terrain from the air to the controllers of the rover to make sure it goes into places where it's pretty safe for a rover to go. So we have our first scout on Mars. Really quite remarkable. This is really where our dreams take flight. And of course, as I said, our greatest dream about Mars is that once upon a time, there was a second Genesis on Mars. That once upon a time, long ago, life began independently on another world. And some fossils of that life, or maybe some pieces of life frozen into ice, microscopic life, of course, not giraffes or potential Rotary Club members, but microscopic life might still survive or leave fossilized evidence behind. And if it's true that Mars could start that life could start independently on Mars, well, that's a really exciting discovery because we now know thousands upon thousands of planets around other stars. We have discovered planets elsewhere. And if life could start in other places besides Earth, such as Mars, then who knows how many other worlds in the galaxy, in our cosmic neighborhood, might also be places where life began. What an amazing, amazing idea with which to pursue our exploration of space. Thank you very much. Great. I'll just say, President Steve, that if people want to read my science fiction or see more about my work, I have a website. Somehow Fraknoi.com was not in great demand. And now I'll stop sharing and be glad to take questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Fraknoi. Are you going to write an astrology book too?
No, I'm a big battler against astrology, so I write anti-astrology books, unfortunately.
Okay. Fair enough. Well, we do have a couple of questions in the chat I'm seeing, but would also like to invite anybody in the room who would like to ask any questions to come on up to the mic. Would love to hear what you've got. But we do have a question in the chat. Is the liquid actual H2O or another composition?
Great question. So yes, just because we see dried up riverbeds, how do we know that it's water rather than ammonia or some other liquid? Well, it turns out, and this is interesting for life elsewhere, water is one of the easiest things to make in the universe. So where liquids are possible, we see water forming everywhere. Pluto, for example, has lots of water. Many of the moons of Jupiter, which are solid, have lots of water. We see water in the great clouds of raw material in space where new planets and new stars are still forming. So we think water is one of the most common liquids. And because we see so much ice, which is water ice on Mars, that's what leads us to believe that the ancient liquid we're seeing impressions of must have been water. May have been mixed with other liquids, but mostly water.
Fascinating. Okay, and we do have a question in the room too. Ed.
Surprise, surprise. Thank you so much for presenting to us. It's always a personal highlight for me when you do. This is less about Mars, but I'm curious if you have any guesses about when we're going to see businesses trying to tap into asteroids and bring them back to Earth for their mineral content, things like that.
Great. So for those of you who don't know, asteroids are small chunks of rock left over from the time that the solar system began. When the sun and its family formed, janitorial services were not up to snuff. And so there was a lot of garbage left over. Some of that garbage is rocky. We call it asteroids. Some of that garbage is icy. We call those comets. And there's a whole belt of asteroids between Mars and Jupiter, which have among their rocky compositions interesting minerals, minerals that if we had industry in space could be mined. But remember that the value of a mineral has to factor in transportation costs. And so the problem with mining the asteroids is the cost of getting there, sustaining a mining operation, and then getting the results back. And none of that is likely to be competitive with mining on Earth or even mining the moon, which is next door. And so I suspect that the mining of distant asteroids may still be quite a long distance off. I think the next place we're going to mine and the next place we're going to explore is the moon. And by the way, the moon also has some water. We've now discovered water in deep craters near the pole of the moon where sunlight never shines. And so there might be water on the moon to mine, and there might be minerals. So that if I were investing, that would be my next target.
Very helpful. And we've got a question in the chat here, and then we'll come to our live in-person question. Could the problem with the Mars atmosphere happen here on Earth? I was kind of thinking about this too, just in terms of what we're seeing in an acceleration of global warming and climate change. Is there any correlation here?
Excellent question. Yes. So the good news is that the Earth has enough gravity to hold on to most of its atmosphere. We do lose some, but we have volcanoes replenishing it. And also because comets contain frozen gases and they hit the Earth over geological timescales, they too help replenish our atmosphere. So we're not worried about losing our atmosphere. What we're worried about is changing our atmosphere. And there we can point to another planetary neighbor, Venus. On the other side of us, Venus has global warming run amok. Venus has an atmosphere that is mostly carbon dioxide, the stuff that we're putting into our atmosphere, and that's causing global warming. And because the carbon dioxide from volcanoes on Venus has increased the amount there so much, the global warming on Venus has pushed their temperature up to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hotter than the self-cleaning cycle of your home oven. So that's global warming gone crazy. And that planet stands as mute warning to us to not make our atmosphere full of carbon dioxide.
Wow, who knew? Okay, and we have a question in the room. Go ahead.
Hi, Andy. This is Morris Chubb, a voice from the past.
Hello.
I promise not to tell any stories out of school, so. But the question that was previously asked brings up another question, and that is, how do we know that the atmosphere around Mars has escaped? Or indeed, you did show that 95% of the atmosphere is in carbon dioxide. Is it simply that it changed from oxygen into carbon dioxide?
No, so we don't know anything about how the atmosphere changed, and we suspect that it probably was quite a bit of nitrogen and carbon dioxide at the beginning. What we know is that the original formation process that made Mars, the Earth, and Venus had a lot of gaseous material in it. When those planets were warm at the beginning, we think when they all started warm, there was a rich envelope of gas available to each planet. And so each planet probably had a thick atmosphere to begin with. Earth and Venus have strong gravity, so they held on to a lot of it. But because Mars is such a puny planet, it was not able to hold on to the original assignment of air with which it began.
Very helpful. And we're going to default to our past president, Fernando, here for the final question.
Yes, thank you, Professor Fraknoi. I heard or read somewhere that helium does not occur naturally on Earth. Is that a fact?
No, we have lots of helium. I think what you're thinking about reading is the origin of helium. Helium was originally discovered in the sun before we ever found it on Earth. That's why it has the name helium. Helios means sun in Greek. So we first, by using the light of the sun and breaking it up into a rainbow, we discovered the existence of helium there first. But we've now found helium deposits on Earth, so kids can put it in balloons and sound like Mickey Mouse at their birthday parties. So there's a good supply of helium on Earth as well.
Professor Fraknoi, thank you so much. I'm turning it back over to Steve.
Thank you, Andrew, and we will be making a donation in your name to an important astronomy organization. And so we thank you. I agree with Morris, or with Ed rather, that your talks are always the high points of our year. So thank you, Andrew Fraknoi.
Thank you so much.
We have a guest here, I believe, from India. Would you like to come up and exchange flags?
Hey, Steve, while that's happening,
Yes, Leslie.
can I just publicly again thank the AV team who's worked so hard? And this was,
Leslie beat me to the punch. You all noticed my little cards. The last one said, thank John and Mike and our new friend Brian for all the work they've done. It's been a long challenge. Rotary buddy, come on up to the stage, please. Thanks to you guys. They've put in countless hours making this right, and today we finally got it right. So for those of you who are new to Rotary or haven't been to a meeting in the last couple of years, since we had no meetings, it's a Rotary tradition to exchange club flags when people come and visit from other clubs around the world.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ravi Dua. I'm a member of Rotary Club Gurgaon, which is very close to New Delhi. Ours is the oldest club in Gurgaon. It's about 50 years old. So we are celebrating our Golden Jubilee now. And we have about 95 members in the club. We have a lot of activities going on. We have a full-fledged school under our plan. We have some hospital helps going on. We're doing a lot of plantation. So I bring to you good luck and best wishes from my president and my governor and people of India to people of US. Thank you very much.
Couple of quick announcements and then we can go home. Urban Vibrancy is an organization created by some local developers who are really trying to do something important for our city. They're paying for all of this. Every Friday afternoon, they're putting on a bunch of concerts and public events. If you don't know about it, ask me and I'll tell you. Try to support them and attend those meetings. They're really trying to support the small businesses that are really dying downtown. Many have already died. Hopefully we can keep some of them on life support. Just a reminder, make sure you write in Steve Borkenhagen for governor. That's Steve Borkenhagen for governor. Thank you. And that's Borkenhagen with a B. And next week we have Jim Bettinger speaking on what happened to the news. Should be a really fascinating program. Thanks all of you for coming.